Good morning and welcome to Parent-Teen Connection. My name is Rachel Eastop. I am a counselling psychotherapist for all ages, and this is my son Sam, who's an actor, singer, performer, and all-round decent bloke.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So we're carrying on our new series called Angels and Demons. We started last week. If you've missed that, you can catch that on YouTube, and I think as a podcast as well. So just go back and have a listen. We're going to continue with that this week. But before we do that, there's just a few things that have been on my mind. Sam. So as a counsellor of all ages, I work with pretty much everybody. And so I was aware lockdown 1, okay, this was my experience, and it was also borne out by my colleagues who I supervise and talk to, and they were saying very similar things. What happened lockdown 1 is that not only were we as a profession still learning how to get online and re-educate ourselves and try and keep up with what was going on, children and young people didn't want to receive counselling online. So we had a real problem. There was a huge gap between provision and need. So the young people either that were receiving counselling beforehand or before lockdown either didn't want to change. They'd only ever known face-to-face. That's what they wanted. And for young people who'd not had counselling but needed it, were a bit unsure of the medium. So, and there was an awful lot of maybe telephone calling that was going on, and young people. And the reasons for this is because I think there was a sense that privacy or lack of privacy. You know, during lockdown, the entire family's in the house. When a young person or child comes to see me, they see me in their office. Although for the younger ones, the parent may not be too far away, there's certainly that element of privacy and confidentiality into what they do and what they talk about in the session. Whereas, you know, none of us, you certainly have no privacy where you are, do you? You're in the kitchen. Everyone can hear you.
Our kitchen's open plan, so it's like kitchen, dining room, and conservatory. Whereas like the living room's behind me where my girlfriend is. I can see her right there. She's probably watching this. And she can hear me because she's probably watching this. But if I'm speaking at like certain volumes, you can hear what I'm saying. So if we were having a conversation right now, even though the doors are closed, it's not hugely private at all. And you can see through these doors as well. It's even worse.
Yes, exactly. So a lot of young people, you know, the best place for them was in their bedroom, but then that's not always soundproofed either. So it's a really tricky one. And I knew that there was going to be a lot of research around this that was going to start to emerge. Now we've come into, well, for England, it's lockdown 3. For Scotland, it's lockdown 2. What I'm finding is something slightly different, is that more young people and children are happy to work online or happier to work online. And that's possibly because they've now got used to this medium because they've been doing schooling online. So now they know, you know, how it can be used. And perhaps they feel that they can get a little bit more privacy. I think that parents are being very respectful. I think that maybe teenagers are not aware that the parents can be that respectful to them and their time. I mean, I you know, in private practice, when a parent approaches me for counselling for their child, then, you know, I make it very clear to them about confidentiality and about the fact that their young person needs to have that space where they can say what they need to say. And parents will make the, you know, a conscious effort not to interrupt, not maybe be downstairs when the young person is upstairs, give them their privacy, stay away. And that, I think, makes the whole thing a lot more safer for young people. But of course, there are some households where that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen for a variety of reasons. So the research that I've been looking at, and I'm looking at a huge amount of research at the minute because I'm going to be doing some research, and the research that I'm going to be embarking upon this year is around therapists' experience of working online with young people. There's a lot of ethical issues around research, and we're not able to interview young people directly, which is a shame. So we have to go through the sort of therapist's experience of working with young people. But there is some research that's come out, and I've kind of just captured the conclusion of these research papers because you wouldn't want to read them all. But so one's saying children and adolescents are probably more likely to experience high rates of depression and most likely anxiety during and after enforced isolation ends. This may increase as enforced isolation continues. It's interesting, their choice of words, enforced isolation. We call it lockdown, but actually they're right. Clinical services should be should offer preventative support and early intervention. Really difficult to do, because for two reasons. One, we can't anticipate a lockdown before it happens, and secondly, the nature of enforced isolation is that I think it propels depression and anxiety, the rate at which it comes on. So I think somebody who maybe didn't even suffer from depression or anxiety could find themselves weeks into lockdown feeling very depressed and very anxious very suddenly. And so it's very difficult to capture that, because a lot of the time you're reliant upon, certainly as therapists, somebody else identifying that, particularly with children. So clinical services.
The word choice of like enforced isolation is interesting, but like, because I guess teens or young people could necessarily be known for like isolating themselves anyway without a lockdown. Like if they feel it, like if they feel in a certain way, or isolate themselves from their family if they want their own space. So an enforced isolation where it's not their control might have a very different effect to.
Well, it is. It's about choice and power, isn't it? So if you, as a young person, choose to take yourself off to your bedroom, you've made that decision because you can. Whereas no teenager, nobody likes to be told what to do.
I remember you were talking about like the teenage experiences about gaining independence and wanting to do stuff yourself or whatever. And that I had a thought about how that is what it is about. But now if you're in lockdown during that period of going through that teenage phase, you need to get independence. You can't really do it if you're just being told what to do all the time by the government, which is, I understand, obviously you have to do this stuff, but like that must really affect them if they can't be all like, I'm going to go out with my friends, or I'm going to leave and do this. Like you can't do that. You know what I mean? They can't have that experience or that point in their life of doing that, which is, that must really be horrible.
Yeah. Now, the other end of the scale, which I thought was interesting as well, was social anxiety disorder. So this is for young people who don't want to go out at all. So this is not an enforced isolation. This is their utopia. It's like, great, we don't have to go out. We're not encouraged to go out. So all of the normal interventions that are put into place, like, I don't know, flooding or whatever, which you might encounter, school is the environment where social isolation is combated and at its most, because social anxiety, because you're in a building full of thousands or hundreds of other kids and young and people. So it says here, as a result, people with social anxiety disorder are receiving positive reinforcement for avoiding the very situations to which psychological treatment would encourage exposure. Despite pragmatic challenges imposed by the COVID-19 outbreak, it is imperative that treatment of social anxiety disorder continue during the pandemic. So it's almost saying treatment needs to, lockdown, counselling needs to be one of the sort of essential services for situations like social anxiety, because somebody like that needs the exposure therapy, needs to go out, needs to be with their counsellor, their therapist, working on being out, being outside, being with other people, which is so difficult to do when you're in a lockdown situation. And actually, interestingly enough, and I think this is an important thing to say, is that the government have released kind of a whole list of essential services and things that can continue during this lockdown, and counselling is one of them. So that's really good news in terms of if we deem it's detrimental to the emotional well-being of our clients that they don't have face-to-face counselling, we can still provide it. So for those of you who are thinking, I need counselling, but I just can't do it online, or don't want it any other way, but I absolutely desperately need counselling, please still contact a counsellor, because they can still provide that for you, or they should be able to, or they should be able to pass you on to somebody who can still provide you with counselling face to face, obviously with all the right measures put in place about social distancing and wearing a mask and hand washing and all of those kinds of things is really, really important. Okay, the next one, and I'm not going to dwell too long on this, but this is the crux of it. So a current study represents an important step towards increasing the use of online psychological interventions for adolescents, right? It is evident we need to invest more resources in implementation strategies for online programs alongside investment in their development and research. I was thinking about that this weekend. I am really interested. I have no idea who's going to listen to this podcast, or I have no idea, but I'm just hoping out there somewhere is some IT guy, right, who can write programs but doesn't know what program would suit online psychological services, because they're not a counsellor and psychotherapist, psychologist, or whatever. I'm up for working in collaboration with somebody, because I have no skill in IT, being able to write a program, but clearly this is the way to go. And I am constantly looking for ways in which I can use online programs, interventions, things that can help me connect with a young person online that they can use as interactive. And so if anyone's out there that's going, yeah, I could write that, that'd be no problem. Clearly there's a need for it, and there's a call for funding around this development of this kind of thing. And I would be really, really up for that. So I've got no idea if anyone's out there that's got that skill, but if they do, I'd really love to know.
Or if you know someone and you're watching this.
Or if you know someone. Yeah, exactly. Get in touch. www.thewellbeingacademy.co.uk, Rachel at thewellbeingacademy.co.uk. Okay, so let's get on to our series, Angels and Demons. Sam, which one are you cleaning his glasses? You need a moment. Cleaning said glasses, getting ready for
the read.
The great read. Okay.
So, what do you want to start with this week? Do you want to start with your angels or your demons?
Shall we finish on a high? Okay, let's go with demon first.
Okay. So one's quite dark. I mean, they're always quite dark if you're going for like murder and stuff, but this one's quite horrific, I think. Okay, so our demon of the week is called Cameron Crudis. He was 17. Cameron Crudis, Cruddace. That's weird. Cruddace. Yeah.
What an ass. 17. So, yeah.
Teenager Crudis bludgeoned to death frail pensioner Richard Percival with a claw hammer in an attack so frenzied blood was found on the ceiling. That's the opening line of this article. That's quite horrific, isn't it?
How old was the person he bludgeoned?
I was just about to tell you. The 17-year-old struck Richard Percival, 71, at least 12 times in a frenzied attack before rifling through his pockets and stealing £620.
In his pockets?
In his pockets, or his I imagine his pockets and his house. I'd imagine. Okay. Mr. Percival, a popular former club secretary at his beloved Vulcan FC, was found dead slumped on a couch at his home in Dixon Avenue, Newton Willows, on August 17th, 2017. So this is what, three and a half years ago? Talking. Right. Picture of the chap.
Wow.
Hard-looking boy. A friend of the teen told how Crudis said, "I think I'm born to kill." That's what the teen said. He said that to his friend.
Right.
What sort of person wakes up in the morning planning to kill someone? The friend said. He was also described. He also described Prudence as being happy with what he had done, adding he was bouncing off the ceiling, chanting, "I have murdered someone! I have murdered someone!"
Wow.
So this is clearly like a very ill person here, mentally ill and unstable.
Yes.
And when arrested, the teenager admitted killing the OAP and stealing cash, which he then splurged on cocaine. So this is a little bit similar to the last one, where it was the son who killed both his parents, and then used their money to like splurge on a huge spending spree with his girlfriend, and then went back and like took credit cards out in their name and stuff like that, and like went back and forth to the home when they were just lying dead for like 3 weeks, which is like really horrific. But he claimed he flipped after the pensioners sexually assaulted him, and was only guilty of manslaughter due to the loss of self-control on August 17, 2017. But a jury rejected his lies and unanimously found him guilty of murder after only 3 hours of deliberation at Liverpool Crown Court. Teenager of Oak Avenue was sentenced to life in prison on April 27th and must serve at least 20 years.
Wow. So he'll be 37 before.
Yeah, if he only serves 20 years. That's why I'm always like, life in prison. Life in prison doesn't mean life in prison, does it? I don't know. It's either like 25 years, 20 years, or is it like you just spend the rest of your life in prison? You know?
Yes, it's a difficult one because in some ways what they're saying is we'll take a pause and we'll see if actually this person has changed, is remorseful, is actually able to contribute to life and be a worthwhile citizen. And it's difficult to know, isn't it? Because anyone can, he's obviously, well, not obviously, but he's can lie. Yeah. So can I just summarize what I heard you say there? So this is a 17-year-old lad who lives in Liverpool. It was 3 years ago. So a lot of these things need to be taken into account. 3 years ago, he, we don't know if he had any connection with this gentleman.
I mean, if it was in his own house, because you said he was found on the sofa or something, so I don't really know.
He's let him in.
Yeah, he must have been.
Okay. Now, at its worst, this is it's difficult to know, isn't it? So he said the guy had sexually assaulted him or tried to. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what he claimed. He claimed it was like manslaughter after he flipped after trying to sexually assault him, and the jury were like, "You're lying." Because like if he ran around going, "I killed someone, I was born to kill," then you're lying.
Yeah. But he could well have been on the influence of cocaine as well. Because I suppose the things to rule out are: was he a drug taker? Was he under the influence of drugs? Was getting drugs his motivation, or certainly for the stealing element of things? Secondly, what did he actually do? How did they know each other? Is this guy a rent boy? Is he somebody who's selling sex for money and something went wrong and he's flipped? He may have done.
Possibly, but I doubt it. I feel like Erica would have really mentioned that if that was because that's a big factor in this situation.
It is, but whether you know that or not. Yeah, but then there seems to be it felt like he planned it and he had decided he was going to kill somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Or he certainly fantasized about killing. Is there a mental health issue? Is he a psychopath? Is he somebody who needs not to be spending time in prison, but to be spending time in the care of
mental hospital?
Yeah. And he's 17, so he's on that cusp again of adult child.
The last one was 18.
Yeah.
This guy's 17, so it's like there's like a lot of laws in Britain that are around 16, aren't there? So maybe does he count as an adult if he's 17?
In law? Don't know. It's interesting.
They sentence him to life in prison, which they wouldn't do to a kid if he was like 14 and he done this.
Yes, normally they do something until they might have said because he's so close to 18, it would be daft sentencing him for 6 months.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Excuse me, guys. Right. The other thing I'm thinking about is where's the parents in all of this? But also, what am I thinking about? I'd sneezed and it's
gone.
Taking my memory away.
Sneeze that out.
Yeah. Oh man.
But what baffles me about that is the fact that he said I was born to kill people.
Yes, that is sinister, and yes, the whole thing about, I think the thing that upset everybody is, okay, if it was self-defense, or if it was something that you were he'd made a bad judgment call. It's again the same thing of overkill. He has not only killed this guy, he's killed him good. He's just splattered him all over the place.
12 times and over the ceiling and stuff, man.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about 12 strikes, at what point is that man dead? Probably after the second or third. And everything after that is over the top, and it's often based around anger.
Rage,
Who's he really angry with? What's that about? Because there's often a displaced anger, or there's a projection onto somebody else. Maybe this older man reminded him of somebody in his family, in his life. There's a trigger, there's a reason, possibly not.
But also, why if he was born to kill and he's like, a killer or whatever, why is he waited until he was? Why is he wait this long? Why is he wait till he's 17 to do it?
Yeah, indeed.
What if it wasn't his first time? You know what I mean?
Ooh. But also the other thing, which is not mentioned by the sounds of it in that article, but that a lot of people say, which is, if he was gamer, the violent games and things like that will have caused. Now, there's no mention of that, and there's no evidence for that. Actually, there might be if there's already a predisposition, but I think for somebody who likes to murder, killing on screen is not going to cut the mustard. You have to actually physically do the act. So
it's like those documentaries where you watch and they start off with like animals and stuff, and then they go, "Oh, it's not good enough," and then start fantasizing about it, and then that's not enough, and then they have to do it, and then whenever they do it, it never truly fulfills the fantasy, which is why they keep doing it over and over again, because they want it to be like, they want to get to this point that they can't achieve, or it does achieve it, and then they feel depressed when they haven't got it, so they want to keep doing it again.
Yep. And the fact that he seemed to be celebrating almost his first kill doesn't
bragging about it.
Yeah, he's not done it before, but he might, as you say, have harmed an animal.
I imagine probably might have.
So this is 3 years ago, and this is this country.
About years ago. Oh.
I mean, these are the things I said. These are important to point out. We quite often associate these things with America and overseas, and a long time ago,
70s or 60s or whatever.
And it's like this went under the radar. Some, with school, social work. Police,
this is like a local Liverpool newspaper. I had to Google this. I had to Google teens who had murdered, and then it was this Liverpool article about here's teens who have killed on Merseyside, and it was just a local newspaper. It wasn't plastered all over things a teen commits horror murder or anything like that. It just wasn't news. Big enough.
I don't remember reading about it. Do you? I don't remember.
No. So I imagine it probably didn't make it out of Liverpool.
And maybe because he was a minor, it didn't get into the papers.
Possibly, yeah, possibly. Don't know. But I don't think any of those ones were. The last one, the guy was 18, so that one was interesting because it was he, just left the bodies there, and then the different neighbours reported a weird, not seen them in ages. So that one just feels a bit like maybe you would have heard something about that, but again, I don't think it really left Merseyside. It's kind of weird.
I wonder how he was caught. Did it say how he was caught?
Who, this guy?
Yeah.
No, I think he just probably because he was bragging about it, and his mate was like, "That's fucked up, mate." And he went to someone and told them, what I mean? He probably knew the guy somehow, and that's why they had the connection, to him.
Yeah. Interesting.
And he admitted to it.
So, can someone like that change?
I don't know. I've not consciously met one before. So I can't really,
And this is where I feel like some kind of psychological assessment needs to be made, because, is he somebody who's a product of his environment and his childhood growing up?
I'd imagine so.
Does he have a disposition to psychopathy? lots of questions here. Quite
Yeah,
terrifying to
I
think
know.
that he may be released from prison at the very prime of his life to go
Yeah,
to go
37.
about killing
I
again.
don't think he would be released. I think it was just like he has to serve at least 20 years. But like probably, I think there might be also that thing like if it kind of comes around that time, the family of this man is still around, and they kind of go, "Oh, he's up for release." They'll petition, be like, "No, he must stay in prison." But like those women who were in the Manson murders, and they were going to be released because they changed, and people were like, "No, keep them in prison. Let them rot and stuff." So, but even though I'm pretty sure this woman probably had seen the light, considering they were like 19, 17 when they did, and they were literally being like brainwashed by a dude they thought was Jesus.
Yeah.
But like again, it's like that's the question again. Can people change? I don't know. I just assume that they probably have after like 40, 50 years, because I'm pretty sure those women have been in jail for at least 40 years. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that people can change, but I don't think they can change in certain circumstances and in certain environments. I think if there's a punitive environment, then it's not necessarily going to be conducive to change unless there's fear. I mean, there's some people that can be locked up in prison. And it's so terrifying, so awful that they swear never to do anything like that again. And that's possibly those that are not. It might be like, I don't know, fraud, burglary, things that you might do that are not murder end of things, but for to take someone else's life, that requires a certain type of person. And either that you're diminished responsibility, insane, or intentional. Those are the big questions, aren't they?
I know.
And I think people can change if they're given the right kind of input, and if there has been, for example, mistreatment during childhood that's then caused a break, a psychological break, and that person is able to receive the right treatment that creates a repair, if you like, a cognitive
But
repair.
if they have been damaged by stuff in like their childhood upbringing or their atmosphere as a young person, then like if they go to prison, and prison, I don't know what prison is like obviously, but if prison is like violent and fending for yourself and quite scary and intimidating, that's not going to help the person. You know what I mean? Whereas if it's just another atmosphere of violence and being scared of people, or intimidated or threatened, or that's not really going to help him get out of those tendencies. I don't think, really.
Yeah, agreed. Well,
but then there's that thing about nature versus nurture, because we were watching a while ago the thing about Ted Bundy, because he's fascinating as a serial killer, because he was like so charming and like normal seeming and stuff, and like handsome, even though I don't think he was handsome, but everyone was like, he was so handsome. But I was like, he's not handsome at all. He looks like a serial killer. But he was like, according to all sources, he had a very normal upbringing in childhood, and yet he wanted to tear women apart. So where did that come from? Was that the nature versus nurture thing, or was that so every other serial killer that does this kind of thing points to the fact that it's nurture and that his mother was horrible to him, or something like that. But apparently, according to me, he was adamant that he had a great childhood, and so was everyone else that knew him. He was like, yeah, he had a great childhood, or a very normal childhood. So
yeah. Well, let me tell you this. Quite often, my clients will say to me when asked, I had a great childhood. And then when they start to talk about their childhood, it is clear to me that it was not that great.
Yeah.
And actually, sometimes people, what we call, launder their parents at the expense of themselves. So they need to believe that that their parents loved them. So they will make excuses for, and they will tell stories about positive things, when actually, when you hear about it, you're like, you haven't realized that that's actually neglect. We didn't realize
or they only
actually
focus on the
emotional
positive
abuse.
things. So there's actually like a few positive things, but there's actually loads of negative things that you haven't talked about. I guess.
So the fact that he says that may not be,
probably isn't true.
it's not a reliable statement.
Yeah, so he also denied killing women as well. So
So
there's
yeah,
that.
yeah. And actually, I think there's an element of he might enjoy the mystery, not being known, being a
Yeah, that's
conundrum,
true.
being
Yeah,
there's
now.
always a thrill in that once you're known, you have no magic, you have no power. Whereas people are fascinated by him. Is he still alive or is he
Ted
dead now?
Bundy. I actually don't know. I think he was executed. Was he not? I don't know. I'll double check that actually.
I don't
Google
think
that
he
because
was.
I can't remember. But like I was watching Elementary again. I think I've mentioned that before in this podcast. Great series television, so good. I was watching it again, and they were talking about serial killers, and they were like, this could be a married man, and they're outliers, but they exist. And it was like Ted Bundy's one of them because he was married and had kids and stuff. I'm pretty sure, and never was totally fine with his wife and normal with his wife, I think. And then, was doing what he was doing, and it's just like, why is she different? Why, why is your wife like, why are you not doing that for her?
Yeah.
Not that you should, but it's
Yeah.
dead. But he's still alive, deceased. 24th of January 1989. That's ages ago. Oh no, he was executed.
Oh, he was.
Executed by electrocution.
Ooh.
So the chair, basically.
Yeah, that's a nasty one.
Yeah, injections the nicer way to go, but they obviously thought that he was worth the chair. It's probably depending on what state he was in, because
I think it
changes
does.
from state to state. So
yeah,
or it did change from state to state. It's not really a big thing anymore. So. Yeah.
Wow.
Like again, to think like I don't know if I really don't know what it's like in America anymore with like different states and stuff. But I heard about something recently, which I'm not going to get into because it's too political. But someone got executed recently. But think about these kids and the people that were talking about this. This is all in Britain and like England and stuff. But like, imagine if they were in America, these kids probably be getting put on death row and stuff. Or if Britain did that, they'd be like, facing that at some point in their life.
Yeah, I think the thing about back in the day, if you were sentenced to death, you were carted out then and there and executed.
Yeah,
not
but
that
everyone on death row seems to be like, the person on death row has been on death row for 55 years. It's like, why are they on death row?
What is that about? Why
they're basically killing them at the end of their life? Like, what's the it's kind of weird.
It's killing them slowly, isn't it?
And I'm not saying by that you should kill them faster. I'm just saying, like, what's the point in having death row in the first place?
Agreed. No, I'm that's where I'm going with it. I'm not saying kill them fast.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, and a lot of that is about appeals, and the point of appeals is because they want to be absolutely sure that they've got there's a reason to kill another person, because it's actually two wrongs make a right.
Yeah, I know.
And so actually, I think that's a very punitive way of dealing with people who break the law and take another person's life. There are obviously those loved ones from those who have been killed who say kill him, string him up, whatever, and want that. But actually, is that a moral thing to do for society? And as you say, it's quite a political discussion, maybe not one that we should be having on our light-hearted podcast.
We talk about killers and stuff.
Oh, do you know what? I apologize, guys. I didn't have the God damn, there's a whole load of comments.
You're not good at this.
Comments because I didn't have the right thing on. Right, so I'm just gonna read them before I read them out, just in case.
Really scanning and scanning and scanning.
Okay. Yes, there's some general comments, but So Joe says, Joe Laughlin, that's how it's spelled. Please don't try to justify why someone could kill another person, regardless if he was mentally ill or taking drugs. There's no reason for killing someone. That wasn't what we were trying to say. Absolutely agree with you. Absolutely agree.
We just think that it's fascinating as to why people do it. There has to be a reason why people do it. We're not justifying it, saying it's right. We're trying to understand.
Yeah.
Which is why people are so obsessed with true crime documentaries and stuff, because people want to know.
Yeah, exactly. He's given us a good piece of information, though. He said, yes, in Scotland, if a teen kills, they are trialed as an adult. I know this for sure. Oh, okay, Joe. Dun, dun,
Yeah, this
dun.
person, the way they were typing that first comment, seems like they've had bad experience.
There's history there. But in Scotland, that's the case. But this lad was in
England. Maybe it's the same in England. Yeah,
and
maybe.
well, English law and Scottish law can sometimes be really different rather.
Yeah.
I agree, Joe. He said people tend to forget about the victim in murder cases and focus on the killer. That's what's wrong with the world. Yes, there's a whole. You're absolutely right, Joe. We know all there is to know about this lad. He's the one written about. Well, he's not actually, because we didn't know about him. But
didn't really know much about him.
You're right. Is that the person that he killed, that gentleman, 71-year-old man? We've no idea.
The older man was quite into his local football club. He was like a diehard fan of what is it called, Raven? Vulcan FC.
Vulcan.
And that was a picture of him there actually in the 70s playing for Vulcan FC. So there's a bit of information about him in this article, which is pretty decent, but there's not enough about him in this article. You're right, but this is a horrible way of looking at it, but at least he was, in his 70s, and he'd lived a decent amount of life, which is a positive I'm taking from it, silver lining, I guess.
Now, listen to this. Joe goes on to say, I wish I could tell you my story. It was a big story in Scotland in 2018. Joe, if you'd like to tell your story, get in contact and you can be a guest. We'd be delighted. I don't know if you are banned from telling the story because it's
signing an NDA or something.
But if you're not and you want to talk about it, get in touch.
Or if there's any news stuff about it, if you'd rather not talk about it, or if we'll get in trouble for having you on here, and just lead us a link or something, and we'll look at it next week or something.
Absolutely,
that's even more local.
Yeah, we're delighted, Joe. We'd love to. Fraser Ogilvie says there's a punishment part of a sentence that has to be followed and served. Yes, punishment for the crime. Yes. Then it depends on a few different factors to whether the individual is released. Yes. Okay. So a punishment time has been set, and that punishment needs to be served because that's justice. After that, you then look at the individual and you make the decision as to whether there's been rehabilitation or there's any kind of remorse, and whether this individual has served their time. Yeah,
I understand that, but what I don't understand still to this day is that you can get sentenced to life in prison, right, or life sentence, which can either mean 20 years or full life. And I'm not talking about it's sometimes 20 years. It's always 20 years. Sometimes they let them go. It's sometimes they get sentenced to literally the rest of their life in prison. Not just America, and I'm watching that on American TV or something, but people will literally get especially if there's 2 or 3, they'll be that's a life sentence and a life sentence. So you'll be in prison for 140 years, even though they're gonna die. But do you know what I mean? They'll get sentenced to life in prison. So that's why I'm confused about why some people get sentenced 20 years and then anymore, or to get let go at that point, or some people you're gonna be in prison for the rest of your life. Because I just think all of that warrants stay in prison for the rest of your life. Because even though they might have changed, it's your punishment should be that, or for certain crimes.
And maybe some of this is about the victim's family and for the victim, that to know that somebody was found guilty and in prison for life is a recognition that this was an awful thing and it deserved that.
It could also depend on what they're found guilty of. Sometimes they might be found guilty of manslaughter, they weren't in this case, but they might be found guilty of manslaughter or accidental death or something, or only killing one of them or something. You know what I mean? Rather than all of it, because they can't sometimes prove all of it. I don't know. It might depend on that.
New comment. Wait a minute. Here we go. Jamie McLean says, I believe people can change, but for someone who believes that they are born to kill, would he accept change? Would he allow himself to be changed? Yes, that's a fair point. Jamie, there in that people have to want to change, and people need to be remorseful and decide I want to be different. If someone has, it's almost like I'm not an expert on this, but isn't it like an addiction, or a need to kill, or it meets a need in somebody, or there's an excitement around killing, or there's some people are almost slaves to it, have to do it or feel they have to do it. So it's like asking somebody who's on drugs to stop taking them, to stop doing it.
They have to want to not.
There has to be
but I feel like that might be more like serial killers than like just someone who's killed. Like a human talking the talk, talking big game and being like, I've killed somebody, but inside they might be turning them apart. We don't really know, because we're not him. But from the sounds of it, it sounds like he's one of these like, addicted to killing, born to kill people. But he might have just been chatting the big game. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know why you would, but
Yeah, exactly. Joe goes on to say, no one is born to be a killer. Nature makes them kill. I agree with that. I mean,
I agree with that.
Not born to be killers.
I agree with that, because that's what the evidence shows over like years and years, because of when we've studied, killers or serial killers, they've always had like something in their upbringing.
Absolutely.
There's nothing to prove that they're born wrong and like, they have this thing in their head and it's a must kill. But
yes,
yeah, I agree.
I believe it's nature plus nurture.
It's not really versus, is it?
It's not one or the other, it's both together. It's almost a perfect storm, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a multitude of factors put together, environmental as well as nature, as well as nurture, as well as maybe situational, time, whatever, as a whole kind of thing that's present to bring that about. But yes, you look at there may be it's somebody who's a psychopath, who has no empathy, who cannot feel for themselves and cannot understand emotions in others. That in itself, because it's empathy that stops us being cruel and unkind and unpleasant generally as people, doesn't necessarily make you a killer if you have no feelings, but it can manifest that you behave in a certain way.
Because like someone did research into this, didn't they? They had like this brain surgeon guy or something, where the psychologist was looking at the brain, and they did scans of like normal people. I use that term for want of a better word. People are not psychopaths, and then people who I've killed, and they had this different brain scan. They had like an underdeveloped part of the brain, which was the bit about empathy, I think, and other bits. And then he did, for a test, he did a scan of his own brain and found that his brain matched the psychopath's scan. He had the same thing in his brain. I can't remember, but I know it's true because I've read about it, and it was in a documentary that I've watched. I can't remember. I'm sorry, but it was like
if anyone remembers,
they did like tests and stuff about it, and it was like a breakthrough, and like, oh, that's what it is. They're missing a part of the brain. But the guy who was doing it scanned his own brain and found he had the same brain. But like that's the thing, is that's the nature part of it, isn't it? Where it's like if you have that, then you might be like that. But if you've been brought up horrifically, then that plus that is probably going to equal something quite bad. But like obviously that guy probably had a lovely life and was like, or maybe he didn't, but he wasn't quite like that. He had an underdeveloped part of the brain, but he was not a killer. He was someone who was helping people, scientist, doctor, all that kind of stuff. But
and actually neural imaging has really helped propelled our knowledge of mental health, psychological health. So it's the physical has helped us in the psychological, and brain scans are just fascinating.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, because the brain's fascinating.
It's fascinating.
It's like electric stuff happening in there, isn't it?
Yeah,
and it's like it picks up.
So Fraser goes on to say, Mindhunters, which we've watched and is brilliant, is a great show to watch for a look into the minds of serial killers from a dramatization point of view.
It is.
So good.
Yeah, so good. This is where I pick up most of my stuff that I know about. That and like actual true crime documentaries, but that's a really good show. That show is about I'm going to plug that show because it's so good. It's about set in the 70s, I think early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, and it's before the term serial killer was even penned. Like we didn't actually have the term serial killer, we just had like a killer who was like killing out people and going about just on a spree. And it was about the FBI created this small unit, like small task force, which was I think called the Behavioral Science Unit. And And Jonathan Groff, who is in a lot of things, is Kristoff in Frozen and was the Mad King in Hamilton, all that kind of stuff. Did a lot of stuff. He is the main guy in this, and him and another guy, I can't remember the actor's name, and those two are kind of the lead forces in this, and they get the help of this like female brain scientist, and she's awesome, or psychologist, and like they come together and they kind of just like basically just want to know what goes on, like a bit like what we're kind of discussing here, but like way bigger. Why serial killers do what they do, and they interview people that are like really big serial killers. They interview Manson in the second season, and I can't remember his name, but they interview that guy who's huge, and the guy who plays him aced him spot on, and he's in Umbrella Academy. They interviewed him as well, and it's like they like if you watch interviews of these guys in real life and then the dramatization, it's like they nailed it. Like it's scary how well they do it. And it's kind of about them understanding why serial killers do what they do. And it's directed by David Lynch, and he's quite a dark, serious director. So yeah, go and watch it. It's really good.
It's really good.
Yeah, it's really good.
So here's our next week's demon. Sam, make a note of this. So Joe, who was telling us about his own story, goes on to say, I don't mind talking about it. If you Google Alicia McPhail, she was my granddaughter who was raped and murdered aged 6 years old by a 16-year-old boy. I'm so sorry, Joe.
That's horrific. That's horrible.
That is horrific. And he says the killer was sentenced to 27 years in prison, the first of its case in the history of Scotland.
Wow.
So we will look that up, Joe.
That was 2018, you said. That's so recent.
2018 was when it happened.
And he was 16. That's mad. Like again, like that's even more local than that. Again, I've not heard about that.
Is it the case, Joe? You might be able to tell us this, that it doesn't make it to the papers because
the family may not want it to.
Accused. Well, it might be, but the accused is underage, is minor. That would be good to know that.
Because I'm like, why have we not heard about that? That's like horrific. That's so horrible.
Yeah.
I will definitely look into that for next week. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you, Joe.
Let's lighten the mood, shall we? And go on to our angels.
Let's finish on high.
These ones I've kind of I'll look up some more for next week for different ones, but I just googled them last week and had a leftover one from last week. These are all kind of American ones, I think, and they're very not specific. They're a bit ambiguous about it, but I just think the story is quite nice. So this story is about the prom-bound teens who came to the aid of car crash victims. Sounds pretty good, right? So wearing three-piece suits and floor-sweeping gowns, 20 seniors from Western High in Davie, Florida, were heading to their prom in white stretch limo on May the 11th, my birthday. In front of them on a highway, a Honda Odyssey van started swerving wildly, nearly driving on two wheels until it hit a side barrier and flipped over. The limo screeched to a halt, narrowly missing the van, whose passengers were already in a panic, yelling, crying, and trying to free themselves from the broken glass and crumpled metal. The limo driver and the students scrambled out to help. The limo driver reportedly kicked one door open to get access to the passenger side. A student climbed on top of the van, forced the sliding door open, and reached inside to free some of the passengers. There were young kids in the van, including a small child who was stuck under one of the seats. The limo driver was able to pull the child out and handed the kid over to one of the gown-clad students. The group continued to help the bloodied and petrified passengers until firefighters and police arrived. All told, 7 injured passengers were taken to nearby hospitals, and the students, they were shaken, but they continued on. Quote, I went to prom and a lot of girls were helping me get the blood out of my dress, so it was good. And that was the story of that. So can you imagine you're on your way to, I mean, we don't really get it as much in the Britain as it is in America, but like you're on your way to like the prom or the winter formal or something, I don't know, and you've bought this dress and you've rented it or you've spent a lot of money on it and this suit and you're all there with your girlfriend that you're really nervous with, then all of a sudden the car crashes in front of you. Like, I can't even imagine what that would be like for a start. Like, I've never witnessed that in my life. I've been lucky enough to never be in that situation. But like, to them to just like without hesitation just go out and help as well. I think that's pretty good. And the limo driver was just like leading by example, like just straight out there.
Yeah. I mean, they weren't precious about, because sometimes I think that teenagers can almost be a little bit lacking in empathy sometimes in terms of, I don't want to spoil my dress, and I don't want to get muddy and blood everywhere and can we just not call an ambulance. But to get stuck in and just be really focused upon the fact that this is an emergency situation, and just helping.
Yeah.
And
they obviously did call the police as well, or like an ambulance, because they arrived. So they must have, phoned someone.
Somebody called and somebody. There was 20 of them. There was plenty of them to be doing something.
To be honest, that's also good for them to use teamwork as well in the numbers to like grab people and help them out and stuff. So there's like 7 people or whatever in the van, and there's 20 of them. They can help out, kind of make a team job, which is quite good.
Absolutely.
I thought that was quite a nice spirited one as well. I just have this picture of like in my head of like a dark freeway and like unlit and all that kind of stuff, and stuff's happening. And it's like, they're all just like freaking out. It's like a film in my head. I can just picture all. But yeah, I thought it was quite sweet. It's quite a nice story.
Yeah, it's a nice story. It's a lovely story.
I wish we had the names people so we could like name them all and they're brave and stuff, but no, fortunately we can't. But hey, we do try and name good things about, in this series rather than just being like focusing on a horrible person like a killer or anything like that. So
yeah, exactly.
That makes it a little bit better, Joe.
And it's actually really nice, and that's why I wanted the sort of balance between the two, because I think that sometimes teenagers are given a bad rap, and it's nice to hear how acts of valor and courage and kindness and love, we can talk about them as well. So if any of our listeners know of any UK wide good stories as well, that would be really, really good. Joe has said that, just going back to our original story, it was in the national news, in newspapers and news shows. We as a family had news station from across the world reporting on her murder, mainly because a child killed another child, very similar to the James Bolger story in Manchester, which was something that we were going to cover, wasn't it? Which always is really sinister. And I think, because actually those 2 lads are now men. And there's a whole pile of stuff that goes along with that you hear about. Anyway, yes, and I just want to say that Mandy has been lovely. Mandy Louise Paul has said, I think murder and killing is all wrong and it should not happen, because every time I read about it, it makes me upset. Yes, I agree, Mandy. I hope you're okay listening to this show.
No.
She's gone on to say sorry to hear about this, Joe, and it's nice for her to thank you. Yes, as Joe said, thank you, Mandy. It's important and brave for people to, Joe, you've switched on to this program. I don't know if you had any intention of landing on this podcast and listening to this, and I'm sorry if it's dragged up painful memories for you. And I thank you very much for bringing it to our attention. I think that I hope it would honour your granddaughter if we spoke about it. It wouldn't be for its morbid sake. It would be to just talk about it. And I think you're right. We try not to focus too much upon, and in our research that we do in the future, we'll try and balance out the victim and the perpetrator as well, so that we're not just talking about the killers and we're just trying to highlight that actually teenagers can do some pretty horrific things. Absolutely incredible things.
Yeah, because this podcast is about that. It's about, parenting connection. We're talking about like understanding, I guess, each other better. But for us that doesn't have any personal connection, so we can kind of assess neutrally what the teen was going through or thinking at that moment, not justifying their actions at all, because we're trying to highlight how horrible the actions were. We're just, as a neutral point of view, trying to understand why they might have done such a thing. But I think next week, if we go on that topic, we'll talk more about your granddaughter and stuff, and kind of the situation, and try and highlight it a bit more, rather than
definitely
assessing the killer or whatever, because that's just a bit
absolutely
shite in it.
It is. Oh, it's more than that.
I wanted to mention a local hero, because I brought him up like 2 weeks ago to you, I think, but we were like, we'll leave it until not for the first week. I want to mention him. He's not a teenager, but I think it's quite an inspiring story. There's this guy who runs around our estate, and he's called the Dalek Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And he started during lockdown, instead of because he went on like a daily run or whatever, but he thought he could maybe bring some joy to his daily run, and now a bunch of people are now dressing up as superheroes and running around Dalek. So I just want to read his he's got a GoFundMe page. If you just I think if you just type in maybe like Dalek Spider-Man, it'll probably pop up. I don't know what the name of it is, but it's called David Roper, I think. And his little blurb says, okay, so back when this started, we were all in lockdown. I figured I would do my daily run in costume in the local area and cheer up the local kids who could see me through the window. My son Liam is autistic and attends Cali School in Dulwich. I would love to be able to give a little bit back through donations to a wonderful school. Flash forward 6 months, and we've built an amazing team of superheroes. So there's a huge team of them running around, and they get honks and stuff. And driving bads are awesome. So yeah, local companies are donating absolutely amazing prizes for me to raffle. I absolutely love this community. I'm so proud to be part of it. And so the fundraising goal was £25,000, and they have £64,849 raised so far, which is amazing. And that's just for a school. So
incredible.
Yeah, if you're in the local area or not in the local area, you think that story is inspiring, then please go and donate to that because it's really cool. And yeah, he's doing a really cool thing during lockdown and just being good for his son as well, Liam, who's autistic. So it's just quite a cool story.
What's his name again?
I think it doesn't really say, but I think it mentions the David Roper is organising this fundraiser, so I think it's David Roper.
Okay, we hope it is. Sorry if it's not, but well done, our local hero. That's a fantastic story, good news story, and I spotted him. I've waved.
Yeah, it's really cool. On my walk, like, there he is. And then, if you see him, you're lucky, like, oh. And you often be like, quite cool.
Yeah.
I also wish that I could run for long enough to join their superhero group, but I can't yet.
I know. Who would you go as? What would be your superhero?
Well, I'd want to be Spider-Man. He's my favourite, but he's been taken. So I don't know. I don't know because there's loads of them, so I don't even know who's been taken yet. But I guess I quite like Iron Man. So if there wasn't an Iron Man and there wasn't a really clunky suit that was like, there was like a fake
suit to run in. Yeah.
Or just fly. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be good. Okay, I have to think about my superhero. We could do some fundraising.
On the spot now. What would your superhero be?
Do some fundraising. Let's do that.
How are we going to do that?
Think about a cause. Right, so there's been a few messages here. I'm just going to mention them before we clock off and sign off and say goodbye to everybody. Stuart McKeon has said, poor Joe, the general public moves on and forgets about these things, but the family has to live with it forever. Absolutely tragic case. Yes, the family never forgets. And Joe has said it's been good to get it out, so thanks, guys. I'm really pleased about that.
And I'm sure there's certain things that Joe can, and his family can go to people like yourself, Mum, or that will deal with, grief counselling and stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and trauma counselling.
Trauma, yeah.
So Mandy has said, my dad might know a few things. He likes his murder stories. Or well, let us know, Mandy, if you come up with any good ones. Becky has confirmed that David Roper is the Dulwich Spider-Man.
Yes, I thought it was. Yeah, it said on the GoFundMe that it was organised by him, and it was written in the first person, so I thought it was him. Cool. Yeah, shout out to him if he's watching or anyone who's watching knows him. He's a legend.
Joe has said, Rachel, you could be Superwoman.
Yeah, Superwoman. There you go.
Is that Superwoman?
Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman.
The Superwoman's a thing. Superwoman's a thing. Yeah.
Is it? Is Superwoman?
It's maybe Supergirl actually. Superman, Supergirl. I don't know.
What about Captain Marvelous?
Captain Marvel.
Oh. I'm just making
That's
it up.
What we call in my house a Rachel woman.
She should be Captain Marvelous.
She should be Captain Marvelous. Marvelous. Oh no. Captain Marvel. That could work. You could do Captain Marvel. Yeah, sure.
Could do Captain Marvel. Something. I think there's already a Wonder Woman who runs about.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
Superwoman. I'm going to look that up. Thanks.
Yeah, Supergirl.
Okay, so that's us signing off for another week.
Very much. Yeah.
We're so thankful for those of you that joined us this morning.
Mm-hmm.
And we might be hitting on something here, Sam, that's a good thing to share with everybody. Don't just want to talk at you. We don't just want to talk to each other. It's lovely that we've got other people joining us.
You give us stuff to talk about as well.
And they bring, absolutely. Certainly beef out our podcast no end.
It's like when you've got a word count in an essay and you just like have no idea what to say.
We need more words. Hey, look, don't talk about essays. I've got 2 essays to write this weekend, and I have like woefully bad. at both of
It's
them.
your fault for leaving it too late. No, I'm joking.
What did you say?
It's your fault for leaving it too late, isn't it? Joking.
Oh, absolutely. Lastminute.com. Right.
Like every student, that never changes from your teenage student to a mature student. You still leave it to the last minute to do an essay.
I know. Joe says, keep up the good work, guys. We certainly will, Joe, and we hope you'll tune in next week.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
And we look forward to more of you tuning in. Thank you very much. That's us signing out. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.